repositioning himself elsewhere in the room. But he also leads the dance of conversation by way of his writing, which sets a different choreography in motion. Today, as most days, the three of us are joined by Ellen, one of Adam's art collaborators. Like Adam, Ellen and Estee are both artists who often work in material or sculptural modes. But sculpture, writing, dancing, twallowing, these forms all stay in conversation when we're with Adam. In between his sustained waves of typing, which sometimes last for 100 words or more, only punctuated by the spaces that separate them, he pauses to replenish himself and welcomes reflections on what he's just written, or just as often, a reflection on how he's just written, as together we revel in the patterns of sound and sense Adam is drawing forth. Our ideas as writers and artists bring us into a thrilling intellectual tango, which happens alongside the tactile dance of Adam's fingers on the keys. As Adam types, I take the words down in a shared Google Doc. As his fluid sentences emerge, voiced one word at a time by the vocal synthesizer connected to his iPad, my mind attempts to keep pace and my heart leaps to think in this way, doing the poetry love that brings us all into a swell of fellow feeling. It is in these swells and waves that we continuously welcome each other into the ongoing dance of collaboration, interdependence, and neurodiversity. Poetry love can be a hard thing to explain to people who are not in the practice of it, people who have often been alienated from the possibilities of it by their previous experiences, most commonly the experiences they had in high school. Poetry is an art form that can be difficult to pin down, and when people try too hard to pin it down, they often ruin everything that makes poetry magical. When you focus on what poetry is, or worse, should be, you instantly lose the most important thing about the practice of making a poem. What could be? What could and can and does happen in a poem is the light at the heart of its practice. If the poet uses constraints or rules or restrictive patterns in a poem, it is always to open up something larger, a feeling, an experience, a connection. And if it's hard to explain poetry, it would seem even more difficult to explain the remarkable reciprocity poetry shares with autism, or autistic minds, or autistic ways of moving through the world. Is it the way patterns, rhyme, line count, meter, so crucially embed themselves into the visual and sonic framework of each poem? Do the poem's formal elements, line breaks, stanzas, repetitions, delineate a space where creative decisions are more readily perceived and undertaken? Is there an almost architectural element to building poems that lets autistic writers inhabit their particular ways of making language? Does the hand of the poem open to the writer and reader in a way that leaves space for the breadth and depth of autistic intensity? Whatever it is, I have watched my students, time and again, grasp the hand of poetry and begin dancing like they've been doing it their whole lives. It's my pleasure to welcome you into the dance also. The dance that's all so thrillingly expanding around us as we move into a future characterized by movement. I write these words on the winter solstice of 2020, at a time when cultural and political movements have unveiled so much of the destructive machinery that treats certain bodies as negligible, silenceable, and disposable. I am writing from Minneapolis, where the murder of George Floyd, 10 minutes away from my house, led to global uprising, an emergent movement that seeks accountability, reckoning, and a pathway to liberation. These movements resonate alongside the neurodiversity movement, which is changing the way that we understand cognitive and sensory motor difference, shifting us away from a pathology model where people are judged by how independently they can hew to some unknown quantity of normal or neurotypical, and toward an ethics of